What is a true fact so baffling, it should be false? The record for most children born to one mother is 69. To the wife of Fyodor Vasilyev, B. 1707 c. 1782. A peasant from Shuya, Russia. In 27 labors. She gave birth to 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets and 4 sets of quadruplets. Edit. Wife name is Valentina Vasilyev. Not sure what's more impressive, having that many children, or considering it's the 1700s. Living through it. The longest time between two twins being born is 87 days. I see these threads a bunch, but this answer has me interested. Gonna look up the source on that one. Kilkenny, Ireland. Gave birth to twins Amy Ann and Kate Marie, Katie, Elliot 87 days apart, making them the twins with the longest interval between their births. The twins were born at Waterford Regional Hospital. Amy was born prematurely on the 1st of June 2012 and Kate followed on the 27th of August. Guinness World Records. If sound could travel through space, the roar of the sun would be deafening even though it's 93 miles away. Edit. Because space is a vacuum. Sound can't travel though a vacuum. Edit again. Obviously lots of other things in the universe would change. And yes, presumably other stars and planets would make noise too. We'd probably all die screaming as the Earth itself imploded from the pressure of traveling so fast though a universe that wasn't a vacuum. Last edit. Yes. Jesus Christ, Rick and Morty. As hundreds of you have pointed out. From 1613 and 1620 a samurai traveled to Rome by way of Mexico. During this time, Shakespeare was still alive. Virginia had been founded for around a decade. Galileo was accused of heresy. And Pocahontas arrived in England. He met the Pope. He was made a Roman citizen. His name was Hasekura Tsunenaga, and was the last Japanese person to officially visit Europe until around 1860. There were more planes destroyed in World War II than there are currently intact planes on Earth today. I mean, everyone was making a sheet ton of planes. A sheet ton of sheety planes. Commercial airliners nowadays are pretty sickening in terms of military planes. The dominant air force in the world is taking a quality over quantity approach, despite also having quite a few, but yeah. Edit. What I meant by sheety was vastly simpler designs that were more conducive to more quantitative production, because WWII in a lot of facets was a numbers game. Like they did the same thing with tanks. It didn't make sense to pour too much money into any given piece of hardware because it was just going to get blown up, since the technology didn't exist to prevent that in any way. These days, they can do that with planes, at least, because it's kind of hard to hit something that's literally going as fast as a bullet. Gotten a lot of responses about how WWII planes weren't actually sheety, and I agree. I was just using coarse language. There is an extremely rare condition called Stoneman syndrome. It causes any smallest damage done to tissue to regrow into a bone. Speaking briefly, people affected by this sickness slowly turn into living statues as they get older. I saw a documentary on that once. One advanced sufferer had to explain to the young girl with the syndrome that at some point she was going to have to make a choice: be frozen forever standing up or be frozen forever sitting down. And the pros and cons of both. Utterly chilling. Edit. I have managed to find the documentary and have timestamped it to where her mother, not the kid herself, I misremembered, meets Robert Kingham, the man I mentioned. As of 2016 she was still going, aged 17. Although the disease had progressed. When a woman with breast implants is cremated, the implants will melt into goo. It drips to the bottom of the furnace and needs to be cleaned up once cooled. Kim Kardashian gonna just straight up melt into a puddle. Edit. Holy sheet, thanks for the silvers and golds, WTF. To scale. The distance between a nucleus and orbiting electron is 16 times longer than the distance between the Sun and Pluto. There's a universe inside us. Oxford University predates the Aztec Empire by over 200 years. And for fun one of my favorites. Woolly mammoths were still around at the time the Great Pyramids in Giza were built. Harvard didn't teach classes in calculus when it was founded because it wasn't discovered yet. Cheetahs can't roar, but they can meow like house cats. Nintendo was founded in 1889. Didn't they start off as cards? Yes, Hanafuda. According to Wikipedia, they still make them in Japan. People were deliberately infected with malaria to cure their syphilis. And the man who developed this treatment, Julius Wagner Jauregg, received the Nobel Prize for it. The extremely high fevers of the malaria infection killed the syphilis bacteria. Then the patients were cured of the malaria using quinine. It's pretty well known by now. But calculators today have more computing power than Apollo 11. We got to the moon with slide rulers and huge gonads. There is no universally accepted definition of vegetable. It's a cultural and culinary term. And varies from place to place. If my son hates it, it's a vegetable. Problem solved. A 500 pounds. Cigarette smoking, beer drinking brown bear named Wojtek was enlisted and served in the Polish army during WWII. Private Wojtek helped the Polish win the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino. And was even promoted to corporal. Following the war, he retired in Scotland. There are more trees on the earth than stars in the Milky Way. Every time you shuffle a deck of cards, you've probably made an entirely unique order. As compared to every other shuffle in history. I love the cards one. When I tell it to people, I usually go with there are more unique possibilities for card order than there are atoms in the solar system. A lot more than when they call BS I tell them to Google estimated atoms in the solar system, 1057, and compare it to 52 factorial on their calculator, 867. Edit, yeah I used to when I meant to use E. Please I just need about 10-15 more people to write the same comment and I think I'll finally learn my lesson. There is no good metric for the number of languages on Earth. This is mostly because linguists cannot agree on what constitutes a new language and what constitutes a dialect of an existing language. The best current metric of how many languages exist is the number of translations of the Christian Bible. The Tyrannosaurus rex lived closer in time to us than it did the Stegosaurus. When Mt. Everest was first measured it was exactly 29,000 feet. It was reported as 29,002 because exactly 29,000 was not believable. Whoever decided that was the first man to put 2 feet on Everest. You can fit every planet between the Earth and Moon, including all the gas giants. But if you lined up all of Jeff Bezos's money from end to end, it wouldn't fit between the Earth and Moon. It could go to the Moon and back 34 times. Jeff Bezos has enough money to make a ladder to the Moon. And to make it out of money. In dollar bills or pennies? Dollar bills. Jeff Bezos's pennies could go to the Moon and back roughly 207 times. President John Tyler, born in 1790, has 2 living grandsons. A similar one I like is that there is a living person who is the daughter of a US Civil War veteran, at least as of 2017. And she gets to draw a Civil War veteran's pension. Sense of smell is molecular, meaning that molecules of what you are smelling are actually inside of your body as a result of smelling them. Think about that the next time you enter a public restroom. GPS satellites have to compensate for time dilation, because time runs at a different rate in orbit. We live closer to the lifetime of Cleopatra than she did to the building of the Great Pyramids. You are closer to being a millionaire than Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. Well, between Jeff Bezos and I, we have an average net worth of 60 billion. Even if 99% of Earth's population thought you were unattractive, 76 million people would still find you attractive. Too bad those 76 million people never see me. Edit, WTF didn't expect so many likes. Thank you. Millennials who have a bachelor's degree make 20% less than baby boomers did at the same age with just a HS diploma. You see your nose all the time. but your brain just ignoring it. An eyewitness to Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater told his story on national television. Edit. Based on suggestions below, I'm proposing a new version of this factoid which makes it sound even crazier, but still factually true. An eyewitness to Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater appeared as a contestant on a nationally televised game show with Lucille Ball. Mike the Headless Chicken lived without a head for 18 months. In the last 3,000 years, there were only 268 years in which there was no war in the world. If you earned $1 every second, it would take 2,921 years to have more money than Bill Gates. It's okay. I think I'll survive earning $3,600 an hour. Edit. Thank you kind stranger for the silver. Edit 2. Since a lot of you are mentioning taxes and leap years, here's the math for you. A common year would net you $31,536,000. Or $31,622,400 during a leap year. With these earnings, your US federal income tax bracket would be 37%, so a common year would give you $19,867,680 and a leap year $19,922,112. Taking taxes and leap years into account, we can determine that it would take you 41,739.2 years to reach Bill Gates' current 2019 net worth of $103.8 billion. Edit 3. A fellow Redditor kindly said that tax brackets in the US don't work at a flat rate. So the math is more complicated than what I, non-American, initially thought. The color orange is named after the fruit. In 1000 BC, a war was cancelled due to rain. Edit. Woo first silver. Thank you stranger. Sharks evolved before trees did. In Florida it is illegal to tie an elephant to a parking meter without first paying the meter as if the elephant were a car. Where in Florida do you find live elephants? Please don't say Disney World and Dumbo. Most early human inventions like stone tools, fire, and clothing weren't invented by humans at all. They were taught to humans by our hominid ancestors. Whales used to have legs. If you took every civilian-owned firearm in the US and laid them side by side, you would have a giant belt of guns long enough to go completely around the moon. After going completely around the moon, you would still have enough guns left over to equip every soldier in the world with 2 guns. The phrase plastic surgery has nothing to do with the material. Plastic surgery as a field predates the development of plastics by 70 years. The two terms simply share a Greek word root meaning sculpted or reshaped. Millions of trees are planted each year because squirrels forget where they hide their nuts. The Canadian government had a secret homosexual detecting device called the Fruit Machine, which it used to find gay men and purge them from their jobs. The accuser regularly stripped down to their underpants and blow whistles while riding golden shrines through the streets on the shoulders of dozens of men in loincloths. If your husband ducks another woman, you can sue her for compensation. Wombats poop cubes. There are more atoms in a single glass of water than there are glasses of water in every ocean on Earth. However, there are more possible versions of a shuffled standard deck of cards than there are atoms on Earth. Whale reproduction involves 3 whales. 2 to do the nasty and 1 to keep them from sinking. Talk about third wheeling. There is a non-zero possibility that you could molecularly decompose or fall apart. Your atoms could all suddenly combust. Your atoms could align perfectly with the chair so that you could fall through it. It is so unfathomable how unlikely it is. But it is still possible. Also, look up Joe Rogan explaining infinity. Might keep you up at night. Sharks have been around longer than trees. A black widow spider's web is 12 times the tensile strength of steel. SARS fail rate is over 80%. I personally know someone who in his carry-on accidentally packed a loaded handgun, made it on the plane, and was so freaked out when he landed, he UPS'd it back home and took a Greyhound bus after his trip. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and the first dinosaur fossil was discovered in 1819. This means that he went his early childhood without going through his dinosaur phase. A million seconds ago was week before last. The 24th of July. A billion seconds ago was 1988. Only 4 people have been to the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the ocean. One of those people is James Cameron, the director of Titanic. Didn't he make the movie Titanic as an excuse to visit the actual wreck? Was it for the abyss? That was a great movie film. Inches. There are over 9 million variations after just 3 moves each. 288 billion different possible positions after 4 moves each. In a complete game there are more possible positions than there are electrons in the observable universe. Taser is actually an acronym for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle. TASER. That makes it sound like something you'd buy in Red Dead Redemption. There is a jellyfish that lives forever. From the first manned flight to the moon landing was only 66 years. 1903, first flight. 1969, first landing on the moon. Orville Wright died the 30th of January. 1948. He only missed the moon landing by 22 years. That really isn't that long if you think about it. Every 2 minutes, we take as many photos as all of humanity took during the 1800s. Transforming the Sahara Desert to a forest would have a really bad impact on the world. Sharks can edit their DNA. And octopuses can edit their RNA. Lost at least 50 bombs during the Cold War somewhere. Removed. The youngest mother to give birth became pregnant at 4 years old. That's as disgusting as it is interesting. A morbidly obese person can survive with absolute starvation without any sickness or feeling ill, under close control. There have been studies since 60s. There is a patient in 1973 who went under a 382-day starvation diet for therapeutic purposes under close control with only vitamin and mineral supplements and water intake without protein, carbohydrate or fat intake, no food at all. Drop her from 207 kilograms to 88 kilograms and maintained it. After a follow-up checkup 5 years later, the patient was 96 kilograms. Stabilized. Prolonged fasting had no ill effects. If anybody is curious about the article, the PubMed ID is PMC 2,495,396. Betty White is so old that she was on a show about being old for 7 years that was off the air before many of you were even born. She's also older than sliced bread. 17-inch pizza is bigger than 12-inch pizzas. Lobsters are pretty much immortal. Not when I get those duckers in my kitchen. They live inside of you. Now. Forever. Lightning is hotter than the sun. The US spends $600 billion in defense per year, which is more than the next 7 biggest spenders combined. $800 billion. You can look back in time by just looking at the stars at night. It works for looking at anything. You just need to look at the sky to look really far back. But even looking at the person next to you is seeing how they were a tiny bit of time ago. As many people died in the first Battle of Bull Run, alternatively, the first Battle of Manassas, as in the entire Revolutionary War. The Civil War resulted in more American deaths, 620,000, than both world wars combined, 521,000. The scale of the conflict is hard to truly grasp. Edit, so apparently these numbers are questionable. I got this from the museum at Manassas. But see extended discussion below. The takeaway for me is that the Civil War was a lot bigger than a lot of people realize. Probably not the best. And definitely not as good as most of the ones I've seen. But whatever. Only female mosquitoes drink blood. The males drink nectar from flowers and are actually a big source of pollination. There are far more tigers in private collections in Texas than there are in the rest of the world. Wild or otherwise. The Hubble Space Telescope can see galaxies billions of light years away. but cannot make out the equipment we left behind on the moon. The fact that we can see galaxies billions of light years away speaks to how enormous the galaxies are. More so than how powerful the telescope is. There is no way to measure a coastline. Like for real. We don't actually know how long the Atlantic coast is. We can estimate it. But we can't measure it. The United States is 5% of the world's population and owns 45% of the world's guns. The US president can be elected with 0% of the popular vote. Giraffes have valves not only in their veins, like us humans, but they also have valves in their arteries. Makes sense considering they need blood flow up that long neck. Australia legitimately lost a war against emus. They're preparing for the next war. This time stronger than ever before. Portugal has a very different drug policy than most countries and it works. They decriminalized just about everything and have vastly improved lives and saved many lives. Seriously, tell anyone this and they still stare at you like you just told them McDonald's is actually good for you. No one will believe you. Treating drug addiction as a medical issue rather than criminal one is incredibly important to this. Doesn't help that the US has an abysmal criminal justice system that encourages recidivism. Some frogs can change genders by themselves. California has the 5th largest GDP in the world. Every 60 seconds in Africa, a minute passes. Together we can stop this.